Alright, hello and welcome back to the channel. Today, we will be rolling it back and talking about the top 10 games from my own childhood. I mentioned in another video that video games have played a prominent role in my life and created a lot of fun memories for me growing up, and I thought it'd be fun to talk about the ones that left the biggest mark. The criteria for this video will be super straightforward. 1. The games had to be released before 2014, and 2. My core memories of playing the game had to be from pre-2014. This criteria is very deliberately vague. This is a subjective video, and it's just one guy talking about games that are important to him. I also want to preface that this is not an objective ranking of the top 10 games from 2000 to 2014. There are a lot of great games I either never played, or while I did play them and saw how great they weren't necessarily significant to me. Lastly, there are a few entries on here that encompass a game series rather than one game. I didn't want to flood the list or omit worthy entries just because I played multiple games in a series. So with that said, let's jump into the list. Alright, number 10, Ratchet and Clank and its series. I'm not sure if Ratchet & Clank qualifies as a cult classic video game series, but I've never really known that many people that have played it. If you're unfamiliar, in the first game of the series you play as a Lombax, a sort of humanoid cat, and discover a small robot and team up to save the galaxy. It's a bit of a wild premise, but one that was executed on perfectly. I owned every game in the series, the original, Going Commando, Up Your Arsenal, Deadlocked, and Size Matters, which, as you can tell, there was a bit of a naming theme there for the most part. And the mixture of fun action and goofy, but not too over-the-top dialogue was fantastic. This is one of the more fun, cartoony action shooters I have ever played, and considering I own most of the series until I went full Xbox and shunned the PlayStation 3, it deserves a mention on this list. Number 9, Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare and the original Modern Warfare 2. Yes, I was one of those try-hard kids in middle school. I loved the original Modern Warfare games and the level of commitment most people of my generation gave towards getting good at them. To this day, I still don't know which of these games I loved more. COD 4 was such a step up from anything before it, and my first real taste of online gaming. Modern Warfare 2 really cleaned everything up though, and to this day is one of the best takes on an online shooter that I've personally ever played. I haven't been a fan of the direction Call of Duty and a lot of other shooters have taken in the last decade or so, and I wish I could return to these roots with simple playstyles, straightforward kill streaks, and a concerning amount of talk about each other's mothers. With these being that first taste of online video games, they were a pivotal moment in my gaming life, so they go at the number 9 spot. Number 8, Pokemon Emerald. Pokemon, man. Anyone who wants to hate on me for loving a series meant for children can click off this video. I love it. I love Pokemon. I love the concept, the nostalgia from the original games and TV series. Shout out to Kanto. And I love every generation that has come out throughout my life. My first real taste of Pokemon was Emerald. I had a Game Boy, and on top of the usuals like Super Mario World and Mario Kart, I got a couple of other games with it, and I honestly can't remember why Emerald was one of the choices. When I originally watched the show, I didn't love it as much as I would later in life, but for whatever reason, Emerald ended up in my Game Boy carrying case. Yes, I was a very cool kid, and I'm thrilled it got there. To this day, I stand by my Gen 3 upbringings, although going back to pre-physical special split days can be rough, and I played that game all the way through college. I know some people aren't as enamored with the modern games. I still love them, and I love the whole Pokemon universe. Although I don't own any plushies, so don't worry, I got it under control. But I love Pokemon, I love the series, and this being my intro into that universe has this solidly in the number 8 spot. Number 7, Assassin's Creed 2 and Assassin's Creed Brotherhood. The interest in Italian history by folks in my generation had to have gotten a measurable increase from these games alone. The Assassin's Creed series is a fantastic blend of adventure, stealth, action, historical flair, and world building. Getting transported back to Renaissance Florence, Venice, and Rome, and running into renditions of real-life historical figures as you try to avenge your family and protect the world from Templars is an unbeatable recipe. Ezio is one of the best characters I think has ever been created in the gaming space. The character growth he shows through the hardships he faced was almost palpable, even as a kid playing these games. On top of that, the endless hours you could spend climbing every building, unlocking every viewpoint, finding collectibles, and starting fights with guards made this a beautiful time sink of a game. Adding in the beautiful soundtrack from these games and the immersion of walking through cobbled streets in Italy, these games have a very special place in my heart and solidify themselves at the number 7 spot on my list. Number 6, Dynasty Warriors 4. You'll see a pattern on this list and in my interests with anything historical finding a place in my life. In this case, we have a bit of over-the-top, romanticized history, but history nonetheless. Combined with action, heavy rock music, and a feeling like you can take down 1,000 men, which if you play as Matang on a horse, is very feasible. This game scratches that itch of pure action meeting very memorable characters. I think it's funny how, even to this day, I can remember most of the 42 playable characters from that game, and I have an opinion on most of them. It's not necessarily a game you would think has that level of replayability, but I found a way, I guess. I love this game, I love its action, I love its music, and we will send off number 6 on this list with the greatest pre-battle menu music ever. Number 5, Need for Speed Underground 2. So my best friend would correct me immediately if I ever tried to claim to be a car guy, so I will not say that I am. But I definitely have some love for cars and racing games that has to be acknowledged. I never really cared about cars or racing that much growing up. I mean, I was a runner, but not car racing. Yet this game was formative to me, and I think about it all the time. The street racing scene in this game was enrapturing. I love the customization. The soundtrack was immaculate, and challenging other racers to a 1v1 on the interstate around the city so you could get money or unique parts for your car was something I couldn't get enough of. I truly believe any racing game I have played since this game came out in 2003 owes it to this game, because it planted the seed for my love of the Forza Horizon series and other games in this genre. This is up there among the list of games I wish I could get a solid remaster of. It's amazing, and I am excited to explore it again in my nostalgia game series. Number 4, SSX Tricky. If you've seen the first edition of Nostalgia Gaming, you won't be surprised by this entry. This is a game that if you've ever played it, you understand why it's on this list. It's a blast. The tricks, the intro music, the courses and the characters, the customization of outfits and boards while trying to beat your own records and find every shortcut. This game is pretty narrow in scope, but it knocks it out of the park. This is arguably the game I think of first when I think of nostalgic games from my childhood. I remember sitting in my basement during winter break playing this game with my friends, and this is one of the few games I really remember bonding over with my sister. It was so much fun trying to discover all the secret paths and seeing if you could find unintended routes down the slopes. This is also most likely the first game I ever 100% completed, so that tells you where this game sits in my heart. I love it. I still love it to this day, and I love it being in my top 5. So, before we get into the top 3, here are some games that deserve some honorable mentions. Madden 2007 and 2008. Weird to leave true sports games off my list, but I love these games, and I think they were the peak of Madden relative to their time. Star Wars Battlefront 1 and 2. And I'm talking about the originals. I hate them not being on the list, but God, were these games basically flawless. Might be the best Star Wars games ever made. Halo. Another one that pains me to omit, but we all know how good Halo was and what that series accomplished. Still have a lot of love for it. And last but not least, Splashdown. A niche jet ski racing game that I love with all of my heart. It needed to be mentioned on this list. And now we move on to the top 3, starting with number 3, Minecraft. The legacy of Minecraft is completely and utterly unique. This game has gone through hell and back, been put down and ridiculed as a game for children, then built back up in its twilight days to becoming a powerhouse once again in the gaming community and being a game for everyone. I truly feel that Minecraft has embodied that sandbox genre, having a nearly limitless world, although finding the edges of the world either means a lifetime of dedication or console commands, and being able to build anything and everything you could ever imagine has not really been contested by any other game. This has been the ultimate communal game for me. No matter where me and my friends were or are, we are always able to come back and play on a server together and build up our little town and catch up. Part of me really misses the beta release days of old, with the old school world generation and the much more simple block palette than we have now. It blows my mind how far this game has come, considering I felt overwhelmed by choices back even in 2010 and 2011. This game allows the creative juices to flow, and I'm not that creative of a guy. And that outlet and the range and reach of this game gives it the number 3 spot on this list, and maybe another spot on another list in the future. Number 2, Medieval 2 Total War. Man oh man, do I have some hours in this game. I believe this game is either first or second for total play time in my life, only real competitors being number 1 on this list, and, spoilers, one of the entries that will be coming in the top 10 games from my adult life. This game, released in 2006, was one I discovered from a neighbor of mine. I was having a sleepover as a kid, and he wanted to show me a new game he had gotten, and he was playing as the Holy Roman Empire, and I got to see a battle between him and Denmark. At the time, I was blown away. It's perhaps somewhat laughable now, but there still aren't a lot of games where you can see 3,000 individual soldiers fighting it out on a battlefield, donning the colors of their own kingdom. That night, I remember he let me have a go at my own campaign, and I played as Venice. I think I played the whole night. My friend definitely went to sleep, but I couldn't stop playing. I love the medieval period in Europe, and I have always been a Western history buff. I think this game came along right as I was discovering that passion, and it ended up being forever cemented in my life. This is a game that has also had a phenomenal modding community. Shout out Stainless Steel and Divide and Conquer. Having mods like one that takes you to Middle-earth during the War of the Ring is combining one of my favorite games of all time with my favorite fantasy setting of all time, and it was a recipe for hundreds and hundreds of hours of playtime. And now on to number 1, which for me is The Elder Scrolls V Skyrim. Now this is an entry that I know will get some people wholeheartedly on board, and some now creating some negative opinions on the type of video game player that I am, and I totally understand both sides. What I can say is, this game brought me a lot of happiness. There really hasn't been another game that captured me as instantly and as wholly as Skyrim did. Between the atmosphere and the music, the fantasy and RPG elements that aren't too in your face, but also still rich. The lore from all the games before it. This game was made for someone with my interests, and I loved the range that it had. Now I have to address the other camp and say that I know that it had its quirks and its faults. As I have gotten older, I have also noticed that it is far more limited in its scope than most of our nostalgia would have us remember. Still, this is a game whose mods and DLC gave it more life than it maybe otherwise would have had, but to that I say that I am not bothered. This is arguably my favorite game of all time, one that I remember playing while my best friend had his own playthrough going on the screen next to mine and being able to talk about our characters and their backstory. Anyone who has watched a Fudge Muppet video knows how much lore you can inject into your own playthrough, and to me that is such a fun experience. So again, I know it has its flaws, and it's driving all Elder Scrolls fans crazy that we still have no real insight into Elder Scrolls 6 in its release. But still, I love this game, and I can't really argue that it doesn't deserve the top spot for games from my own childhood. Alright, so there you have it. That is my personal top 10 list of games that were most meaningful to me during my childhood. Let me know what you think of my choices. Are there any big games that meant a lot to you that I omitted from this list? A lot of these games will appear on my nostalgia game series in the future, so keep an eye out for that, and maybe I will talk about other games from my childhood that I really loved down the road. Thank you for stopping by the channel once again, and I look forward to having y'all around for future videos. Peace.